What's up guys, this is Astranox. This is gonna be my guide, my review of Arbiter Vildred. I am on my third account on the Europe server. I have him. I'm gonna talk about where I do use him, and then I'll follow with I'll talk about his skills, his skill multipliers. I'll talk about skill up priorities. I'll talk of course about his stats and how to build him. So gear, artifacts, sets, main stats that you should go for on the right side of your gear. And also stat priority. Then I'll talk about best setups for PvP and PVE, and then where he shines in the game. So let's begin. So in arena, I do use him quite a lot. I use him on offense, I use him on defense. Right now I'm in champion 1, but ever since I got him, like, I was able to finish in legend. So 5 weeks after, so I got in legend about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks after the Europe server got released, and then so 5 weeks in there, and then I got in champion up until now. Now I'm back in legend. Arbiter Vildred is helping a lot. You can see my offense win rate, my defense win rate. I mean, it's it went down because I got attacked more often and players are more aggressive toward my defense. I'm testing different things for defense, and this is what I'm running right now. And yeah, definitely got extremely lucky there. And for offense, I'm using this here. So I'm baiting different elements. I'm using fire, earth, and ice, baiting all three the RGB elements, well, color elements. And then Arbiter Vildred is able to be at a safety because yeah, they are targeting the other heroes most of the time, so this increases his survival, and it's really cool. And also I have Aureus on Crow, I have defense buff, and I mean defense downs from Ken, the sustain from Destina, debuff clearing. I mean, he's doing really good, and I'll talk about his build, how I have him built, and which build I did try so far. So let's get into that. But right now I'm using him mostly for PvP. He can be recalled. Okay, so his skill ups, I'm working on this. I want to max this out, and then after that I want to kind of evenly power 1 and 2 depending on the cost, right? Because like first one's gonna be 1 more Lagora, and then like if like, yeah, I'll just power them up like depending on their cost. Okay, so I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So that's the stats that I have on him. I'm using 6 attack set pieces. Of course, it's better to go with a 4-piece set plus a 2-piece set, but these are the better items that I have for him. And I like the balance of stats. Like, I don't want him to have full offensive power. I want him to have decent amount of survival and of course some speed. Effectiveness is at 0. But you can definitely build some effectiveness, especially if you use him in PvE, especially mostly in PvE. Then effectiveness is definitely useful for him. I'll talk about all this stuff very soon. So I did try also Proof of Valor for him in PvP. It's been working out actually quite well because Moonlight Dreamblade is random, right? Because that's a 15% chance up to 20% chance depending on how many limit break you've done. But it's still a chance. He does get the attack buff, which is huge. But Proof of Valor will provide you a better survival, unless you, of course, evade. Then that's huge when it does happen. But I'll talk about other options very shortly. So yeah, mostly in PvP, that's where I've been using him. He's an amazing speed farmer. I mean, he's the best speed farmer in the game for adventure, side story, and the unrecorded history. So that's very cool. Now let's talk about his skills and skill multiplier. Okay, so skill 1, you've got a decreased hit chance, decrease combat chance by 15% after skill ups. It always attacks 2 enemies unless there's only 1 alive, of course. And the skill multiplier on that damage multiplier is 181%, and that's on each target. Each of the 2 targets, and you get 30% damage increase from Molagora, so that's quite good. This thing brings him back to life when he dies with between 70% HP up to 100% HP depending on the skill enhancements, and he will have 100% combat readiness and full focus. I'll talk about why full focus is very helpful for him to increase his damage on skill 3 right now, because this thing, I mean, you've got the decreased hit chance, 100% chance for 2 turns, unless of course you get resisted, but you need more effectiveness if you are getting resisted. It depends on how much effect resistance the enemy has as well. So this thing, skill number 3, 164%, that is the damage multiplier. And if you soul burn this thing, it is now 240% damage. That's a huge jump there. And if you have full focus and it's not soul burn, you do 194%. So it goes from 164% up to 194% with max focus. Now if you have soul burn plus max focus, it's 288% damage. That is, I mean, it's pretty close to double the damage when it wasn't soul burn and when you didn't have full focus. So that's a huge amount of damage right there. Let me talk about his stats here. So his attack is very high. His speed is actually it's quite good, but he's a thief, so most thief they have good speed. Survival stats, of course, they're not so high, but they're pretty good. They're pretty good, and I had him survive a lot of damage. Of course, Aureus, defense buff, proof of valor when I was using that. All this stuff was definitely helping him survive. That's why you can't sacrifice all your survival for pure offensive stats unless you're going to pair him with auxiliary lots or a speed, combat readiness boosting team with attack buff, and maybe even critical hit chance buff if you want to build him with like 50% crit chance and like a lot of crit damage and attack. So yeah, different ways to build him. Now let me talk about skill up priority. I would say that for PvP, you're gonna focus on maxing skill 3 and then you will max skill 2, because this is actually quite helpful. So many times this extra 30% HP would have helped me survive with him. It's ridiculous. I definitely need to work on that very soon, but you might want to balance this, because this is only one more Lagora plus 1 on, I mean, all skill ups, so you could be doing that. So for PVE though, you don't have to go all in on this thing, right? If you feel like you're gonna be using him more in PVE or like PvE and PvP, you could just power this up to, I mean, you don't even have to go all the way to +6. Of course, it's quite helpful, especially if you have him as your farmer. If you want him to definitely like one shot with this thing, then you might want to max it out first. But yeah, in PvE, you definitely want to work on that skill 1 as well, because decreased combat unit, this is going to deal a lot of damage, trigger some dual attacks and all that, and he's going to be using skill 1 more often than skill 3 on long battles, so there's also that to remember. So for PvE, you might want to maybe max this or work on this first, and maybe not all the way, but you might start to work on skill 1 as well. You could just do like something like +3, +4 on this, and then start powering this like one here, and then you work on a bit more on this skill 1, and then like you max this one, you come back to this one, and then you finally finish with this. But for PvP, this is huge, these two. So different ways to build him depending on what content you're going to be doing. Now for the gear, artifacts, multiple options for him. So first things first, I want to talk about proof of valor. I kind of did already, but if you want guaranteed like survival increase, right? Damage mitigation, you go with this thing for turn 1 for like the following turns. Of course, the effect decreases. You got 30% damage reduction on turn 1, and then every hit you take, it reduces the damage the damage reduction that you do take. It's reduced by 3%, so it gets worse, but the minimum is 15% when this thing is fully limit broken at +30. And it's definitely helpful because you don't have to worry about randomness too much. It's not like Moonlight Jewblade, it's not like Alex's basket. But still, that is if you really want to push a survival, right? Now, if you want to go for pure damage right? If you're going to cleave with him with auxiliary loss, if you're going to use the combat resistance booster, speed setup, attack buff, and all that stuff, maybe even defense down on the enemy. I mean, if you have attack buff and defense down, Portrait of the Savior is kind of like overkill because you will be destroying them. If you're soul burning, you know, it's going to be so much damage, you're probably like already one-shotting. This is going to be really pushing it even further. But some heroes are super tanky, so you might want to get that extra survival. But if you're just running attack buff only or just defense down only, then this will definitely help you out. So this increases the damage by 20% if you're fighting enemies with 50% HP or more. If you don't have Portrait of the Savior, you can just use Exorcist Tonfa. It's a 3-star artifact. Here it is, it's 16% instead. And yeah, that's your option. You get Portrait of the Savior from a special challenge, so maybe you don't have it. Now, if I move on to Thief artifacts, of course, Moonlight Dreamblade, I would say, is super helpful. Like even in PVE, if you use him as a farmer, and I mean, you get to the boss stage, this can trigger. Maybe you're not one-shotting with skill 3, but you definitely want to. And anyways, if you have the Adventurous Path gear on him, you know, like he's gonna be doing so much damage just with that by itself. So I'm pretty sure you'll be able to one-shot. And if not, well, you've got skill enhancement on skill 3. And of course, you got Portrait of the Savior or Exorcist Tonfa if you want to squeeze extra damage there. So this artifact, super helpful. I would say in PvP, it's better on defense than on offense. But it's random. It's random. If you have Assassin Cartuja, 4-star Moonlight Hero, then it's better to use Moonlight Dreamblade because you have 15% extra evasion chance when he's there. That's a passive that he has. So this artifact will shine more there. But 20% is still very good. But if you only have one copy, it's going to be 15% at plus 15. So maybe if you only have one copy, you might opt for something like Alexa's Basket. If you do like the randomness, if you like to have like some big hits, right? If you want to, like, if you're surviving in offense, right? And you're waiting for that attack buff to use your skill 3 or something of the sort, then you can just do that. That's a pretty good way to go about it. And 30% chance at plus 15 up to 40% chance. And this is a chance per. So you got 40% chance to get the greater attack buff, which is 75% attack increase. And also a 40% chance to get the critical hit chance buff, which is a 50% crit chance increase, which is huge. And it happens at the start of the turn. So you get it, you know you have it, and then you can respond accordingly with which skill you're going to use. So that's very good. If you want a soul burn too, and like if you want to go all in, something of the sort. And also if he does die and come back, if this triggers with the greater attack buff, this is going to deal so much damage. But if you're fighting in PvP heroes like Bloodblade Karen, Sid, heroes that if they kill, they get an extra turn right away, then they can kill you twice. Then Moonlight Dreamblade is better in that in those scenarios, because you have like 2 chances to evade and avoid getting one shot, and it just throws their whole combo out the window, and then you can just win because of that. So that's huge. That's why Moonlight Dreamblade is the artifact that is more like used in higher level play. But yeah, Alexa's Basket definitely can be super dangerous. And if you're fighting, if you see an Arbiter Vildred on defense, and then you're like, oh man, if I don't have a hero that just kills him twice, and like they don't know, maybe they think you're wearing Moonlight Dreamblade, so these players are not even attacking you. But maybe some are like, they're like, oh, I'll gamble it, and then like maybe they don't kill him with one hero twice, and then you get Alexa's Basket to trigger when he comes back, and then there's so much damage coming their way, they might be just wiping out because of that, or losing their biggest threats, and then they'll eventually end up dying. So yeah, it's different options to consider. Now, of course, there's other artifacts. I did fight Arbiter Vildred with Dust Devil before, and on a long battle, right? What happened is that he died, he came back to life. That was before the nerfs. He was getting the attack buff from the skill 2, right? When he came back to life. And so he had attack buff, and I healed my team back to full. And what happened is that one of his allies trigger a dual attack with him, so he attacked me, and then Dust Devil trigger because it can trigger from dual attack. So this happened, and that was a lot of damage. Now his turn followed right after, and I was like, oh my god, like that was insane. He used skill 3 because he died, and then his ally triggered a dual attack with him. He triggered Dust Devil there, and then it was his turn. That was so much damage. It was ridiculous, and he had the attack buff the whole time. Just insane damage that happened there. But this is like just one scenario, and of course Dust Devil, you could use that in PVE. That could be like on a long battle if you're gonna use him in content. Like I'll talk about where you can use him, but let's say you bring him in Hall of Trials and you want to deal as much damage as possible when the boss is weakened. Do you have that option? You could trigger if you trigger Dust Devil, that's some extra damage and 30% chance when this thing is maxed out. So definitely one viable artifact for him as well. So let's move on to what kind of sets you could be wearing on him. Let me just jump back on him. So okay, so for sets, you got destruction set, you got attack set, you could roll with 2 critical hit chance sets, and you could run with a rage set. You could also run with a speed set. So like he's easy to build, right? You could slap almost any gear on him, he's gonna work. But if you want to squeeze that like extra bit of damage, extra bit of offensive power, more defense maybe, then you really want to wear like a 4-piece and a 2-piece, or like 3 2-piece sets to really boost your stats as much as possible. So for 2-piece, you got critical hit chance set, you got immunity set, you got unity set. You could even go with health increase set, 2-piece defense, or even hit set, because I mean he's got decreased combat readiness, he's got decreased hit chance debuff as well. So I mean effectiveness, especially if you're gonna use him in PvE a lot, is definitely helpful. Even in PvP though, you will have to balance your stats depending on the content that you will be doing. Now, for the main stats for the gear on the right side, you want to go with a necklace with critical hit damage, right? Unless you have very little crit chance on your substats, then you might want to opt for a critical hit chance necklace. Now, don't go with a critical hit chance necklace if you're like, let's say you're like 80% crit chance and you're gonna wear a necklace with like 55%, 65% crit chance. You're gonna be wasting too many stats. So go with a critical hit damage necklace instead. You'll get way more bang for your bucks that way. So yeah, first thing is that like critical hit damage necklace, if you can do it, if your crit chance high enough. Then ring for you're gonna go with attack percentage. For boost, you're gonna go with attack percentage as well, especially because of the mechanic. If he dies, he comes back to life, and then like he's gonna go again, unless it's a hero that gets an extra turn when they kill him, and then they're gonna like pop him again. But yeah, so I mean attack percentage boosts is huge, and you will deal more damage per attack. So that's the way to build him. But that's mostly for PvP. For PvE, you might want to go a different route. You might want to go with speed boots, because you will be dealing, you will get more turns during the battle, and it will boost your damage more than attack percentage boots over the course of like a long battle, right? So I mean, if you have a higher uptime on decreased hit chance against the targets. If you keep on decreasing their combat readiness, this is definitely helpful, right? It's going to help your team as well to survive better. So don't underestimate speed boots for PvE content. But that's the thing, if you want to bring him in PvP and PvE, then it's better to go attack percentage boots. But if you're mostly using him for PvE, or even if you don't mind swapping the boots or something of the sort, then yeah, you could go with speed boots and swap. But it's gonna be a lot of gold out the window though. So for stat priority, I would go with 100% crit chance, and then after that you go with attack percentage as much as possible, then critical hit damage, and then you'd go for speed. That is for offensive power, right? But if you want to have more survival, to increase your team survival as well, effectiveness is going to be helpful. Then you've got health and then defense. In PvP, I would prioritize health above defense, because if you get hit with defense down debuff, your defense gets cut by 70%. which is you're losing a lot of value there. But it's about balancing his stats so he has enough survival to actually survive the content, especially in PvE and also in PvP. If you're not running like a speed cleave comp, if you're not using combat units boosters to just have him go before the enemy team, and you're not using auxiliary laws to give him a turn instantly so he can skill 3, use Tagil's Ancient Book to have the souls to soul burn his skill 3 with attack buff, then if you're not going for that, if you're going for longer battles like I'm doing, then you need to have a decent amount of HP and some defense as well, especially if you're going to bring him in PvE content. I mean, he can't be like just dying randomly to just a hit there, or if like your healer has its heal on cooldown, maybe you get unlucky, the boss attacks him and the one ad attacks him as well. Maybe he gets hit with defense down, you can't cleanse it in time and he gets hit and he dies. I mean, you need to have a decent amount of survival on him. I know he has this for like oh shit situations, but still you need some survival, so balance his stats, especially depending on the content you do. But it's like I said, depending on what kind of comp you're going to be running in PvP. If you're heavily using him in PvE, of course you will need some survival stats. Okay, so best setups, I would say that you'd go for like a destruction set or like an attack set plus a 2-piece critical hit set. Now for the stat on the right side, the main stat on the right side, you go for a critical hit damage necklace, you'd go for an attack percentage ring and attack percentage boots. And stat priority is the same that I was saying. I mean, I would just opt for offense before defense and effectiveness, but you will have to decide on like maybe you're able to hit those marks. Maybe your best pieces that brings you the highest crit chance, the 100% crit chance, the highest crit damage and the highest attack also bring you a decent amount of speed and survival stats. But you might have to sacrifice some offensive power for some survival. You just have to remember that. So you will have to test things out and decide for yourself. But try to bring pieces that have a high value, pieces that have a high amount of total stats, not only total stats, but like if you know a piece rolls 4 speed and is like 4 speed, actually it's 5 on item level 85. It's just that it's extremely rare to get 5 to roll initially or on a roll afterward. But like if you're getting rolls that are like close to a high roll every time or like almost every time, then like you might prioritize these pieces because they bring much more value. You'll have higher CP, but CP it usually reflects how much damage. The higher you have, you deal more damage. But if you balance your stats, your CP is gonna go high. So yeah, no. Now where he shines in the game, but before that, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I didn't talk about the rage set. So if your team can apply debuff on the enemy, right? If you're running in PvP with like a speed cleave setup and you're able to land defense down debuff, let's say you're running a Tywin, someone that applies defense down debuff, or for PvP, for PvE, rage set can definitely up your damage by quite a bit. So definitely a viable option. In the best setups, rage could be the best. I mean, if you're running a bazaar, someone that remove buffs off of the enemy team and you're able to apply defense down, as long as there's a debuff on the enemy, you're gonna be that rage set's gonna be activated. Definitely a viable option, right? So don't forget about that. Now for PvE, I didn't talk about Daydream Joker. Daydream Joker can definitely be used if you are fighting targets with high amount of HP. Then have as much crit damage as possible after getting 100% crit chance, and as much speed as possible if you really want to get like as much damage out using Daydream Joker. So another very strong, especially in the Abyss, because who you're attacking has like they have high HP, the higher the floor is. So now there's another thing, sorry. You can be using, like in PvE, if you're gonna be using him a lot in PvE, you can go for triple unity sets. That's another way to go about it. Like if you go with like rage plus unity, this could be the highest amount of damage you can deal with him, assuming you have a constant like debuffs going on the enemy. But if you're fighting a boss that just auto cleanse the debuffs or something like that, of course that's not going to be the best. You're not going to go with Rage set. Now, where does he shine in the game? PvP, of course. Arena, Guild Wars, real-time arena when that gets released. And you can use him on offense, you can use him on defense. And a lot of heroes can only be used in a, like maybe they can only be used in Arena and Guild War offense. Like maybe they only shine in one specific area. But Arbiter Vildred can be used in so many different ones, it's great. So for PVE, he is like the perfect friend supporter. Like your friends are going to be using Arbiter Vildred. It's going to be one-shotting waves after waves. Just great there, of course. He is very powerful in Banshee Hunt. Also in Azimanak Hunt. Very, I mean, he's widely used there. Of course, he is very rare, but very powerful in both of those. Best farmer, like for speed, crazy farmer. In Hall of Trials, he is of the dark element. So if you're fighting fire, ice, earth, he can be brought there, especially if there's a thief damage increase buff and survival buff, then like he's gonna shine even more. If maybe you need to apply decreased hit chance debuff on the boss to up your team's damage, that's another way to go. I mean, another reason to bring him. He is great to clear those ads, man. If you land defense down on just one ad, or maybe even without defense down debuff, I'm able to clear the first wave, the second wave. I mean, actually, the third wave, that was because actually there is an advantage that is 50% AoE increase, and I mean, he's going to be great for that as well, right? So, yeah, if you can land, if you have attack buff, or if you land defense down debuff, or you lower one of the ad, and then he uses skill 3, he's going to just reset it again, and he can use it again, so that's very powerful, right? And of course, reducing combat readiness is great. You should target the, if this thing's on cooldown, you're fighting the ads, you should target the ad, and then the second attack will attack maybe another ad, but I've seen it attack mostly the boss, which is going to reduce its combat readiness because you don't want to attack the boss primarily when the ads are up, because if you do that, well, for what I've fought so far, the ads are getting combat readiness when you target the boss, but when you attack an ad with this and the second attack attacks the boss, it will not trigger that. Same against Queen Azuma Sheik. If you're fighting the counter-attacking mob and you attack one with this thing, right? The second attack, if it attacks the queen, they will not counter-attack Arbiter Vildred. But there's some cases, if you're fighting martial artist Ken in PvP, or even in PvE, whatever, with the counter mechanic, if the second attack hits him, he will counter Arbiter Vildred, so be mindful of that. And also if you're fighting Seaside Bellona, you're building 2 focus every time you use skill 1, so there's some disadvantage as well with Arbiter Vildred though, so just keep those things in mind. Now, he can also be used in the Abyss. Daydream Joker, high crit chance, crit damage, as much speed as possible, will up his damage contribution by a lot there. He is used a lot in like all these places. He can definitely shine. In Raid and Labyrinth, you can bring him, but the camping morale is not so great. I mean, you can probably get around 30 camping morale from what I've seen with my roster of heroes. But maybe there's some team composition that you might be able to do that bring a higher amount of morale, and they are going to change some stuff about camping morale very soon anyways. Now for Spirit Altars, of course he can be used there, no problem, just great. He's Dark Element, Elemental Neutral, you don't have to worry. And also in Automated Tower, yeah, the normal mode's very easy. You can just cleave both waves very easily on the earlier floors. You can bring him on later floors as well, especially if you have him like heavily invested in Mole Agoras. You have like your best like offense gear, or your best like balance of offense and defense set on him. Then like he's definitely a hero. Like you just slap the best stuff on him and he's gonna do great in so many areas. That's what's really cool about this hero, even after the nerf, after he doesn't get the attack buff when he comes back to life, which like in PV that doesn't even trigger, so it's no big deal, right? But Automated Tower, when they release hard mode, he's gonna be used there. Like you can definitely use him there, and he's got that extra safety of coming back to life in case there's an oh shit situation, right? So that's really cool too, and you can sacrifice survival stats because of this whole mechanic there. And the amount of damage he can output is insane. That's another major plus as well. But they might be releasing other PVE content later, and I mean, he will most likely shine in some more stuff, so that's also very cool. But that's pretty much all I had to say about him in this video. I mean, if you want to see more stuff like gameplay of all sorts using him, I've been doing Arena, I've been doing Guild Wars, and I mean, I have done Hall of Trials with him, and I'll be doing a Banshee and Asthmatic Hunt later on. I mean, I'm using him as my farmer, as my my friend supporter as well. And whenever I push in the Abyss, I'll try to bring him and do a video for that as well. And I've been using him. I used him also against Queen Azuma Chic and Jolie V Council in raid because I wanted to test that out. Not enough morale, but you can use him. You can bring him for your. Let's say you're doing your 2 first runs. You bring some high amount of like high morale camping teams. And then when you hit your 3rd run, when you want to clear like Queen Azuma Chic plus maybe another hero that you're having difficulties with, you could have Arbiter Vildred part of your team with other heroes, and you could take out the harder stuff in there with him, even if you don't get too much camping morale, because you took out, you cleared a lot of the way already with like 40 camping morale teams before, or something of the sort. So keep that in mind. But the fact that he attacks 2 targets, man, with skill 1 is such a huge amount of damage increase. It's great. It's great. So yeah, that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. I'm Astranox. Like, comment, subscribe for more. Press the bell icon for like to be notified whenever I release a new video. And check out my other videos. They should be showing up on the screen now. Playlists of all sorts. Arena, Guild Wars, guys tips and how-tos, and Abyss 462 plus. So check those out if you haven't. And also join my Discord server. The link is in the description. If you have him, congratulations. He's definitely amazing. Peace out for now, guys, and have fun.